start with introducing yourself, what you do, what's your story, what brought you?
I'm actually a sales director at Integrated DNA Technologies. What brought me to that role? It's a longer story because while I did my PhD at the Max Planck Institute for molecular biology or molecular genetics in Berlin, I find one of the keys to answer scientific questions is really this interaction of scientists from different fields, like bioinformatics, physicists, biologists, and I studied transcription factors and transcription factor binding. I had this curiosity of finding answers to scientific questions, but I also worked as a self-employed promoter in my own company during my studies. So I said, okay, there is a company outside and they had this great slogan, scientists helping scientists. And there they had an inside sales position open. And I said to my wife, okay, I give it a try. I could ask all these questions working with multiple persons together in a company that have a scientific impact. So not me being on the bench, because even as a supervisor or PI, you rarely do the bench work on your own, but you have to have that curiosity. Within the first 2 weeks, I was absolutely engaged. I said, okay, these guys are working for one goal. It was a stem cell technology company. And I could learn from very talented sales persons. I could learn from the research scientists that have been hired constantly. And after a while, I could switch to being a sales representative to have this direct interaction. Instead of inside sales, you open the first bridges with some questions. You have 10 seconds to get someone interested. Yeah. And I moved then to a DNA service provider, developed a team. And after 5 years working there, I was the general manager at European Genomics, Germany, for the research part. That was also a ride. So because then you're okay, no, I'm not only a scientist, I'm also developing the personal interest of my sales professionals, which is super nice. But you also have this law background part, which is okay, I'm now responsible for P&L. I have to fight with law cases. Yep. And then IDT came to me and said, hey, Stephan, we want to change the way IDT is recognized in the field. And we have a position open, but it's not general manager, it's sales director. And then they showed me what they want to achieve, asked me then also if that would be something that I would be interested in. And I said, okay, if I don't have to take care for law cases and so on and so on. So being general manager was super nice, being sales director and being then able to focus on persons that are scientifically interested like me. Go out and have the honor that our great scientists in the DACH region are just explaining me their projects. We are then able to interact with them and say okay, if you want to have that, you also have the option to team up with someone else. Do you know that little company, it's a small startup, but they actually want to achieve what you want to have. And that's what I then tell also to my team, being that broker of capabilities. So, and that's a phrase that I really love. So you don't go there, only offer what your company could do. You offer what the market can do in general, because not every company can solve or address every question.
So tell me about your current technology.
No, that's part of being trained at the Max Planck Institute. So it's state funded. And part of that role is explain it to the text chaos, meaning we had this long night of science. Everyone could jump in and you have to explain it and just ask, what is your background? Now it's a bit easier after COVID. Everyone knows what is DNA, what is a PCR, could PCR be used for, and okay, these biologists, molecular biologists in particular, are actually doing research that has an impact on us. Interesting. And being in Germany with great companies like CureVac and BioNTech, basically everyone knows. This is also part why IDT asked me to. So IDT manufactures DNA. So DNA can be used for simple DNA tests, meaning we delivered this SNPs or parts of DNA, short PCR primers that are used to detect a rare disease. Meaning, there's a company in Amsterdam, they're buying some probes and they use it for a 50-euro test to find out if a newborn has a disease that could be treated with the daily consumption of extra calcium. So if you don't do it, you have to have a liver transplant at the age of 10. So it's like a super easy treatment with a very affordable test to prevent a severe problem. Now, so that's that. But scale it up. What is IDT essentially doing? It becomes from this service provider for DNA, for genomics testing, on a manufacturer, and therefore we have to produce under these GMP conditions, which means good manufacturing practice, where everything is needed to produce DNA or RNA as medical products. And the biggest achievement, maybe most of us could hear it, it's baby KJ. He had a rare disease, and this was from the IDI, that is the Research Institute of Jennifer Doudna, that Nobel Prize laureate. Then her genomics medicine department provided this RNA medicine that was then FDA approved within 4 months, and provided 2 doses to this newborn to get this to treat a disease. I think it was a kidney disease, so that this little guy was then released and can now live with his family, and that makes a difference. So it's not just genomics testing; you can cure it. And there was also a great interview at CNN, which was featured, and that is part of it. So you go to the customers, you go to the scientists, and say like, okay, Danaher gives us resources to achieve this. They use a significant part of the revenues to support that research. We are also partnering up with all these interested, scientifically trained personnel, and we want to achieve this. Let us know how we can support best.
I mean, you work on something that has positive impact, extreme positive impact in a short way, and then at the same time, you make profit out of that. And this is kind of a win-win situation. Like if you would work in an oil and gas industry, you would not be able to say that, right?
They also do use some of their revenues to do something for the betterment of mankind. But being in the biotech part allows you to have a direct impact on that. So
yes, exactly. Directly you see that, okay, I give this product, I'm in the sales side. I might not do the research myself, but me bringing this product to so many people, researchers, it increases the chance essentially of, and enables them essentially to get better research, do better research, like to do more accurate work, and all of that. At the end of the day, you are distributing the most advanced technologies to the other guys. Like that's essentially the question that people ask me, scientists. Why are you working to help sales of scientific companies? Didn't you have a better thing to do, right? Why don't you make I was in the quantum computing world, so why don't you go there? I said okay, now I would need to bet on myself then and there to do a good thing, but now I can essentially act as this facilitator, or putting oil in the gears so the whole system works better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you can bring the right people to the right companies, right products to the right people, and then they would do that. And then essentially you are acting as something that multiplies the work. What is the challenge that you have seen before essentially starting engaging with Amaury and Scitodate?
Among scientists, the interaction, they go to the conferences. I was at conference. You present your poster. If you are PI, you can present with a talk. People are asking you. But not everyone is at these conferences. Yeah, not everyone has time to read all these great publications and screen what is another lab on the other edge of the planet doing? Are they already interested? And while being a sales representative, I found out like, okay, if I'm in a building of a bigger pharma company in level 3, asking a question, okay, what do you want to achieve? You want to do that. So, but why don't you go to level 10 where exactly this machine is stored and running in another lab and go with your samples there? That would be like quicker than sending it to a service provider. Oh, I did not know that there is such a machine like 7 levels above me. And I was like, okay, there we come to the point what a sales rep can do besides just selling. It's like you are walking basically through to multiple labs the whole day, or you're talking to a lot of scientists.
Keep that in mind, because that was essentially you losing your revenue potential.
No, you might be using revenue potential, but you're gaining trust. And that's more of importance. That's also how I talk with my colleagues in my team. So like, if you know that your current company will cause more problems than contributing to the solution, at least offer what you know. Be that broker of capabilities. And if you do this, the door to that scientist will be open again. So you can come in and also say like, hey, I have someone else. They are interested. Or you go to an NGS core facility saying like, you have a lack of constant flow of new samples. If you are interested, I can team up with 1 or 2 of these startups that are actually looking for NGS core to analyze the data. So, and then yes, you are selling your kits to the startup goes to the NGS core facility using the NGS kits that you sold them. So yes, that's part of your business. Fine. But
so essentially you increase the whole market. So if the other guys are also having more business, then you're going to sell more there. And also what you mentioned, this is actually very relevant. And if they would have a question, they know that you have this knowledge, and then they would come to you rather than just, and they would look at you as a source of knowledge of how these things are organized.
Exactly. So if you gain that, and this is only possible if you're just curious about solving problems, asking questions, getting the answers. And that's how I also select my team members. I want them to be curious. I don't want to be go there and say like, oh, please customer, tell me what you need. Or worst case, going through the catalog and present everything that the company has and put the burden of choosing what works best to the customer. That's a web shop, and therefore I don't need someone visiting you. If you are forced to only sell yours and only sell ask the questions that directly lead to a sales, then why do you need this human interaction? Why should someone talk to you? That's the most interesting question.
What is the challenge here? That's, for example, where did you see a need that essentially you would give us a chance? I know we're just starting to work together. I'm interested to understand the challenge or the objective, and essentially getting to know that as a kind of curious side to it myself.
If you think this through, then Scitodate is a very important puzzle piece to make and complete this, let's say, approach. Because yes, me as a sales rep with a team of like 3 or 4 colleagues, you have a field application sales, especially with inside sales and so on and so on. The chance that you visit all the possible great contributors, which also have like interesting new products that IDT might need. So it's also like going kind of, you're working on this way of creating DNA. That's interesting. Maybe IDT needs that as a service. So would you be interested in a contribution? So it's not always you being the salesperson. It's also you be the guy that buys something or goes back to your R&D department and say like, hey, have you heard about that? And Scitodate with their AI-based search algorithm to screen all that is on PubMed, and everything is published. That is something that I also said at the beginning. So there are so many great publications that you can't be able to read them all, even though you should. And Scitodate is basically doing the screening for you. you can now say like, okay, I'm searching for customers or labs or companies that might be interested in this, have published that. And instead of like putting this LinkedIn, book some time with me, where I always would ask myself, I don't know much about that person. Why should I book time from him? Which is, not so needed. You can pitch like in 2-3 sentences, like, hey, I read your recent publication. Because if the AI is just filtering it before you, you can still browse through the complete one, at least the abstract, or
Exactly.
then you can see what it's all about. And say like, I would be interested in getting more about this project. Do you have like time for a meeting? And that's then the approach. So you are building your network in a more efficient and stronger way. That's why I think Scitodate is a great.
You know why essentially Scitodate started? I'm dyslexic, so I wanted not to read publications, but know what is going on inside them, right? And Scitodate started for scientifically up to date. So myself and one of my colleagues, like at the computer science department, I just finished my PhD. I realized that if I want to read all the publications in my field to stay on top of it, I would not have time to do anything else, to do research.
Yes.
Because I was always slower than anyone else to read, right? And I thought if I would solve this problem for myself, maybe others have the similar problem. And then we started actually I was trying to figure out how and who can make essentially a living out of this, right? And started then there to figure out, okay, like I went to the labs and I realized, okay, like there are these companies, there are brands of them, like, Thermo Fisher, Bruker, Danaher, and such. And I checked them up and I realized, like these are multi-billion-dollar companies, right? And who says that there is no money in science, right? So how is it that these companies are so big? By selling to scientists and R&D engineers. And then I started calling them and saying, okay, do you know where your competitors' products are located? Like, we could essentially identify, because of reproducibility, that people needed to write their experimental setup. You could essentially, if you would gather all the publication of a person, you could kind of reconstruct the lab equipments that they would have. You could reconstruct their labs from it. And then we started giving like a web app so people could do searches on it and such and do the same thing. I remember we did one thing. It was cool. We extracted, like, BD Bioscience was deprecating the LSR2 cytometers, right? So like a type of cytometers, they were essentially stopping the support for it. And then there were around 600 of these known that they are in Europe, but people didn't know where they are, right? And we extracted and figured out, okay, based on the publications, where they are published and who they are published, most likely which labs these. And we were working at the time with multiple competitors of BD. But then we gave them the dates, the names, and the universities and the lab. Then it was very hard for them to take any actions on it. They did not manage to contact those people. Nobody dared to essentially pick up a phone or write an email to these people. And then I thought, okay, we need to essentially take the next step. We need to essentially bring them in front of, because everyone knows how to use Teams after COVID and such. Everyone knows how to use Zoom. So if you would open up the door, then that awkward moment of activities that needs to be done, and we can essentially set up a warm introduction.
So you help people to avoid situations where they don't feel comfortable with. I think it's natural to feel a bit uncomfortable in the beginning, but it's a way of how companies coach you. And I must maybe be more specific. With stem cell technologies, before you are allowed to reach out to a customer, you got extensive training. Like, okay, we practice this, you and your supervisor, you and the sales trainer. What questions are good? What is so that you are a bit prepared, but still there's like a mental switch that I use and say, like, okay, for the next 1.5 hours, I do prospecting. I want to call these persons and I want to know if they are interested in what is their project about. Scitodate is allowing you to do that to each of them. So you're not sending to 500 individuals on the best assumption you have what the sum of these 500 might be interested. You write every single of these 500 a personalized email, which usually is, 500 personalized emails. If you are super quick and you just need like 10, 15 minutes of background information, you can quickly calculate how much working time that.
Is your team currently doing this proactive prospecting currently by themselves?
Yes, because I support them, and this is why we are actively using parts of Scitodate service. So we have one team member that is doing that on behalf of them. We once per month decide what kind of scientific question should be addressed. Like, is it the personalized medicine? Is it the next generation sequencing or the CRISPR card? So you focus on something. Then you screen the publications. Then you send it to the researchers in particular regions, cities, or corporate, but non-corporate, and make it personalized.
What is, because the traditional way of doing business is going to conferences, trade shows, setting up a booth and such. Why don't you send and spend that time and money on sending them to more conferences?
Because sending them to conferences is still not a proactive way of doing it. Because you are at the booth. And if you do not have someone that is going around on the conference and doing the one, you maybe know that, or everyone knows it. If you go on a busy street, outside there are persons that ask you, hey, do you want to come to this specific bar? And they bring you in that bar. So if you don't have someone bringing the interested persons to your booth, you're depending that from the constant flow of conference attendees, someone browses by your booth asking you for something.
Then Resai is still like conferences are the main source of business for a lot of companies.
They are still, because that's what I like about conferences. You have that human interaction. So that's why I also tell my team, if answer that email 20 hours later or in the later evening, that's still fine. Because if we as a company spend multiple $1,000s to attend that conference, use this human interaction.
And then essentially, how would you bring that experience online?
But this would be this was possible before COVID. You could enter like a university clinics, even big research institute, and some pharma companies as well. So you said like, hey, it's 10 a.m. I have my appointment with researcher X, and for the next 2 hours, 3 hours, you are allowed to walk through the building and knock at the doors. Say like, hey, I'm from XYZ company. I would be interested. I was talking to your colleague and so on. So then you have your all-day conference, but that's not possible anymore. You can't enter any company, university or something. You have to have an appointment. They guide you through your appointment and they bring you back. So because of security reasons, which is totally understandable, and have random persons in there.
Essentially so our goal is to bring our partners in front of their potential customers and book a 15 minutes conversation together. And they have, like, for example, a sales rep or a product specialist would have a stream of these meetings, 15 minutes meetings. For example, they want to expand to pharma. Instead of going to 10 more pharma conferences, they would go and talk to every week 2 or 3 of these online and book a one-to-one meeting, and essentially would spread that short conference experience of one-to-one, making the meetings, doing it online, having a one-to-one session with the people that you would want to talk to and you know that they are interested, and having them throughout the year as a constant stream of one-to-one meetings.
there are two ways of Scitodate can help you. So one is like you have the access to the database, screen yourself to have a more efficient way of targeted first contacts. So minimizing the chance that someone feels even reading that email is waste of my time. I'm not interested in that. So it's better for both partners. And then the second part is what you are describing is a more premium service where you bring that constant flow of, or Scitodate brings that constant flow of interested meetings, meaning you do the pre-screening for them and have someone have that conference. And yes, that would be beneficial because then the pre-screening needs not even be done by the companies. The likelihood that these 15-minute meetings, which are basically cold calls, but with a more targeted one, are more to the point, and you're not wasting the time of a potential customer.
We started working together. What would you say that the success or the main success would be for you, or an objective that you would be happy with? The investment that you are doing, the time that you are spending with us. Can you essentially let me know about that a bit?
Yes, of course. I had this because I also had to convince the upper management from that idea. And I said, like, okay, we did it with parts of their services, but we could be even better. And the outcome could be we are broadening our customer base in the startup to medium-sized companies. Meaning you can say, okay, I was first of all able to find them. First, you could also use like tools like LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which is great. Yeah. So, but then you need to tell them, okay, at least one time, half a day a week, you need to screen LinkedIn for new customers, do the follow-ups and so on. But that's half of a day per week for prospecting, which they aren't able to do farming. So this classical hunting farming team could then be supported for each seller. And then the second one, the KPI that I would set is like, okay, in these bigger pharma companies, you name it, like Roche, during however you want to have, it's even more complicated to get a meaningful meeting beyond the purchasing department. So
reaching to the scientists.
Exactly. Because purchasers are overwhelmed with all the requests that the company has to them. So you don't have so much time with a purchaser because they have so many other duties. But with a researcher, you can say, okay, my company could do A, B, C. What does your company has for expectations for you? And then I would say, okay, we found multiple new labs in these bigger research companies, pharma companies, and we understood what their pain points are and could deliver a solution which allow them to achieve their goals faster or at all, or also say like, okay, we have an interaction. So also IDT is interested for private public partnerships. Also my pharma company was running Horizon 2020 grants where you need to partner up with someone else. Yeah, if you would achieve one of the three, like customer base expanding in small to medium companies, pharma companies, more labs, or like making private public partnerships out of it.
So if I essentially recap, there are three sides, essentially expanding the network of the reach beyond what essentially current farming activities and conferences can do already for you in a small, medium size, getting around to scientists in a big pharmaceutical and biotech companies that currently, because they might not go to conferences by themselves, reaching them is hard. And if you want to talk to them, normally you go to the procurement, the normal currently, and going around and finding the person with the problem and with the need and having that conversation to initiate it. And the third one, essentially figuring out who is doing the public-private partnerships and getting to have these conversations with the right parties on the both sides to essentially figure out how you can essentially be a part of that partnership, right? Is there any quantify? How would you essentially judge this? Like, how do you quantify if this was a success or waste of your investments?
The first one, because in the first 6 months or even 12 months, the prospecting success would be like, how many new interested persons could I onboard? Meaning I had a meaningful meeting. They showed interest in what we are doing. Not per se a sales, because that can happen later, even like 12 months later. But you say, okay, this is the first one. And after like, let's say 3 months, half a year, you can still measure from that contact accounts in my CRM, how much revenue was generated. So you could simply say, okay, these are the ones that have been contacted or onboarded via Scitodate. How much revenue was it? And then you simply have your answer.
Stephan, thank you very much again for giving us your time and, your attention, and like learned a lot.
Thanks for giving us the opportunity to get to know each other better.
And we'll be in contact, and like, let's see how we can essentially make this a success.
Likewise. Have a great day.
Have a great day.